Oh, okay.
They're watching you.
What? I thought nobody was ready.
You still on this?
Except me.
Call this meeting to order. And the first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? No, I think we are good to go. Councillor Smith, Councillor Kendall, all those in favor? And we have special meeting minutes of September the 15th, the motion to adopt. Councillor Shag and Councillor O'Doherty, all those in favor. Minutes of the regular meeting, September 15th, so motion to adopt. Councillor Rashagan and Councillor Smith. All those in favor. I know I get it wrong sometimes, just work with me. All right, so we are rapidly into council reports, starting with Councillor Kendall, set the tone.
All right, thank you, Your Worship. I, along with a number of other councillors, attended the BCM. There's going to be some reports from the others regarding some of the meetings we attended, but we had meetings with Minister Oakes, Minister Thompson, and Minister Coleman on several different issues, and again, some of the other councillors will report on that. One thing I found very interesting was for rural BC, the government has announced BC Community Economic Development Investment Fund. The province is working on setting up a rural dividend to assist rural BC financially by using a share of natural resource revenue, which has been a long time coming, part of the rural BC network. They're going to create a rural advisory council to provide rural lens on policy and to create an overarching rural strategy to facilitate coordination and strategic direction to agencies on advancing rural development. So I think that's a positive thing for Grand Forks and small communities throughout the province. I attended a panel on strong communities, and the one major thing that came out of that was a new priority from Minister Oakes on a cultural strategy, again, to support art, culture, and sporting events, and support a more creative economy, which I thought may have some significant long-term benefits for a small town like Grand Forks. I, along with the other councillors who attended the BC Small Business Roundtable Award, and being a part of the select few communities awarded the Open for Business Award, was a real highlight of the work that I feel that's been done in our community on economic development. I think that credit for this award needs to be shared with all of our management, staff, the councillors, all who participated, and the consensus of council to push a lot of initiatives through in the past 3 years, I think is all work towards our success. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank our management and staff for all of the hard work. Without them, that award wouldn't have been realized. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Crog, you ready to go?
Yeah, I don't have anything at this time.
Then
You're
you're ready.
gonna attend UBC.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Councillor General pointed out, I attended the UBCM, and I'll just point out a couple of highlights. At the Small Talk Forum, I had the privilege of reading out to those assembled many of the economic development initiatives that Grand Forks has taken as a council and as a city to facilitate business. One of the big things that I was approached about later was the whole idea of the committee of the whole. It's kind of novel to a lot of folks that were there, and they wanted to meet with me later to find out what that was all about. I met with several people, and I have emails coming in quite regularly from people who are asking about economic development in general. And the fact that Councillor Kendall and myself attended the Economic Development Association of BC Association conference for the last 2 years and gleaned so much from that. There was a lot of people who were interested in sitting down to talk about how we might apply some of that knowledge to their specific communities. The second thing that was a huge impact was the minister meeting with Honorable Thompson from Lands, Forests and Natural Resource Operations. I managed to organize a scrum with the mayors of Invermere, Jerry Taft, Steve Tutsky from Cranbrook, and Nils Jensen from Oak Bay, who have all been dealing with urban deer issues. And we decided as a group that rather than focus on the specific items that each community was looking for, was there a collective ask that we could make? And that's what we did. So essentially, the previous meeting that we had at UBCM the year before, we had asked the ministry to establish a ministry-supported task force or committee to undertake solutions for the ungulate problem throughout rural communities in BC, not just rural actually, all communities that are dealing with ungulate problems. And at the end of the session, our Mr. Thompson said, "I get the message. By mid-November, I will establish a committee that is supported by ministry staff, supported by biologists, and supported by the chairs of the committees of these communities that are dealing with the ungulate issue." And you know, if each of us had been offered $25,000 and a big bag of money, I would have thrown it away to have that happen. And since it happened, I must say that with that commitment by the minister and his staff, I think we've come a long way. This dairy committee is jubilant with respect to actually having achieved something. And so that's what we walked away with. Of course, the deer collars have been ordered through the Ministry of Environment with our biologist who's on our committee, and those will be coming in hopefully mid-November, and that exercise will be undertaken. And all that data is going to be accumulated and compiled and will help us with further management options. I'd like at this time to make a motion for council support. We've already talked about the referendum on the deer issue for the November election, and I'd like to clarify the wording for that. So the motion, I guess, is the meat of the motion is I would like council to support the referendum question, which asks, are you in support of a deer call as a deer management option in Grand Forks?
You know, I hate that word call, but there is a good reason for it, and would you explain?
And I will speak to it after we get a seconder.
I'll second that.
Okay. So in discussion with Aaron Reed, who is the Ministry of Environment biologist, who has been assigned or who likes to be a part of our committee, wanted to make that clear because there was some discussion amongst members as to whether or not we might be able to call this a harvest. However, the term harvest implies a lot of detail and possibilities that aren't inherent in what we have available as a municipality trying to deal with an ungulate problem. You know, there's the abattoir, there's who do we give the food to, all that kind of stuff. It really is a provincial matter. So, you know, in terms of what further you can do with it. So he said, call it what it is. It's a cult, plain and simple. If you find another way to deal with what you do with the meat or whatever, it doesn't matter at this point. At this point, we need to call it what it is, and that's why we came up with the wording for.
And that's why I'll support the motion and fight this battle at another time. Yeah, I acquiesce to the argument. Councillor Vershegen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to make it clear, it isn't necessarily a referendum question. It's a non-binding plebiscite. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep. People can get the wrong view.
Essentially, Your Worship, this is just
An opinion.
is an opinion poll to get so that the DARE committee has an ongoing sense of where the community stands with the several management options that we have available,
So yes
including the
or
ones that
no?
we already do.
Yes or no?
Yes, a yes or no, unequivocal, non-ambiguous, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. And the motion on the floor is to this wording. Can I ask our administration, is there a problem with some of the suggested wording?
I think that it's very clear and concise, so we don't see any issues. The only thing we may have to look at is the length of the wording on the ballot, because it'll show up on the ballot. So we'll just have to look at that. If there's any concerns from the ballot, the company that makes the ballots, we'll bring it back to council soon.
If it's substantial enough to blur any
Exactly.
issue intent.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that's comfortable to me and everyone else. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Just a couple,
Councillor, go ahead.
just one more thing. I'd just like to let everyone know, well, actually, we had this great conversation on SPCA, which I thought was awesome. And I know that more may develop out of this, but it was apparent at the end of that conversation that the SPCA is interested in coming back to our community and working with Grand Forks on the issues that we have. So I was very pleased with how that meeting turned out. Tomorrow, October 7th, 6:30 p.m. at the Art Gallery, Gallery 2, is the Vital Signs rollout.
Yes.
So I would encourage all council to be there, to be a part of that. I think there's appies and refreshments and all that kind of stuff. It's tied up with the Phoenix Foundation and social as well. So we're going to make a big bang out of this. The more the merrier. The more the merrier. All of you, please come on. Let's get her done. That's my report.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Around the table.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have much here to add to that. I too attended the UBCL along with yourself, Councillor Kendall, Councillor Smith, and Councillor Wires. These two gentlemen have spoken eloquently to the conference. I was especially happy with the meeting we had in regards to urban wildlife and the outcome of that, in the fact that there's going to be a committee struck and there was a commitment made by Minister Thompson. I think that was a giant step considering the last year. And the promises that were not kept. But this time it seemed like with pressure from all sides that it seemed like it actually had an effect on him. And hopefully this isn't put off and he holds true to his word. So I believe that you guys covered those bases quite well. Border Bruins are doing quite well. They won 3 of 4 games, which is something else. and it's really, really good hockey. The games they are not winning are very competitive regardless. And for those of you interested in the GFI, their annual general meeting is this Thursday at 7 p.m. at Community Features. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor O'Doherty.
Your Worship, I attend the supper of the senior citizen home in the park. Turkey dinner for the dog slate. And there was about 100 people that attend there.
Yeah.
And we raised extra money, $270 for 50/50. Plus the
I know.
supper. So that was, it was a nice attendance. On 68th Avenue, I'm very impressed with the work that was done to pave 68th Avenue, and I understand very shortly, paint the lines there.
Yes.
So we're getting to the end. And I was very impressed with the work done in the downtown, and especially the trees across the city hall at the college there.
Yeah.
Nice job they did there.
Yes, it looks good.
Yeah, and thanks, the superintendent, great job he's done there too. And, hockey's doing well. And I didn't attend the UBCM. I went to FCM earlier in the spring.
Right.
So,
So what about side betting on the hockey? Is that legal?
yeah, that's okay.
I saw the game, it was really exciting.
Oh, yeah, because
5-5 and then it was overtime. And
good young kids there.
You getting good crowds on?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple things I'd like to cover. Most of you stole everything I wanted to say, but the SPCA, a little bit more on that. I think that's exciting to see such a high level of interest from the SPCA to work with our community. It's really early to say how that might look, but no one could quite remember how we drifted apart. But we want to put that relationship back together. We think there's mutual advantage to it, and I think the next step that we'll see will be actually the SPCA coming to our community and having some sort of public involvement. I'm not sure exactly what the timeframe's on, but I'm saying that we should welcome them back here to talk about the missing components for us. The animal humane services, spay and neutering of cats, and some basic adoption programs, things like that, I think are what really are missing from this progressive community. We can have those services. So, we've got some time to work with them to see what the outcome of that relationship would look like. And the Build Canada Fund, I'm really pleased. We're still really, I think we're at the front of the line with Coralie Oaks. I'm telling you, just, talking about us as the model community and winning the business award. We really stand out as a very progressive community. And again, a lot of the credit goes there to our staff as well. We're up at the front of the line, and I'm really optimistic that when the new Canada Build funds start to develop, which sounds like, it's coming forward, that we will be at the front of that line. So that was really good. Also the Rural Advisory Committee, if I'm still here after November, I would like to push hard to have us play a role in that Rural Advisory Committee at a provincial level. They're the ones that are going to be looking at forestry, sharing resources at a level that we could benefit from here in this valley. So that's my report. Motion to receive. Councillor Smith, Councillor Doherty, all those in favor. At the regional level, I'm going to hold my comments at this point. There's not a lot I'd like to say. There's, as usual, a lot of things going on, but nothing to fruition. We have some meetings coming up this week. I'll have more to report back to council at the next meeting. So that's my report. I'll answer questions. So at the regional, any questions I can answer about the regional issues?
I accept your report.
Thank you. And a second, Councillor Rochelle. All those in favor? Thank you. Sometimes it's better to hold it back until you got something to say. That's what you got. Okay. Next item is the important report. We're being asked to receive this report at this step, at this point. And it is the West Side Fire Protection Project. And I would ask Mr. Allen to introduce this.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our manager of engineering, or manager of engineering is away today with this recent cold, but basically the status report of the West Side Fire Protection is that it was authorized in bylaw 1922. The buildup of standby power was done. We've completed the genset installation. The next step is to move towards to the well project, to the building of a new well to replace well 2. So what we've done now is we're moving towards the the decommissioning of the existing well, and once we've completed the installation of the new well. So we want to move through the process over the next little while, just basically bringing it to council's attention that it would become part of if you've approved it already, but we need to identify it in the upcoming financial plan. Just wanted to let you know that the process is still moving along. We're just seeking the approvals from the proper regulation agencies such as Interior Health and the Groundwater Protection Act, just dealing with that. Making sure we have all of our ducks in an order, so to speak, and we'll report more to council later on, but the project is still moving forward for the replacement of well number 2.
Okay.
Further to that would probably be the location of the well, if you recall, was identified by Mr. Allard, Remy Allard, in very proximal to the school. We'll be in consultation with the school in our right of way there, that's owned by the city for where the well would go. And we talked to the school and the neighbors about what we're doing there, just so they're all aware of the upcoming construction. But again, that would be presented to council in the 2015 budget deliberations when the final pieces are pulled together. We're just simply doing the groundwork to get it all in order. And it takes several months to do that. It's probably on 8 months now for pulling all those regulatory pieces together. So it hasn't fallen off. It's just that's where we are with it.
Okay. And a motion to receive the report, Councillor Doherty, Councillor Rushagan. Discussion?
Okay, I just have one question here through you to the CAO. The standby power unit that was going to be provided for well 2, is there a reason we wouldn't need it on the new well? It says it doesn't seem like it's a good idea, but if we need standby power.
We want to talk about as our water consumption drops over the next little while, we want to make sure that we only have to have we want to make sure we don't overbuild our capacity for standby power. So again, once that evaluation is complete after the installation, we'll bring that back to council. But that question still stands, do we need it or not? And as we see we're anticipating the consumption is going to drop over the next year for sure.
Okay, thank you. And further? Motion to receive the report. All those in favor? Carried. And we're down to information items. And as I said, this is in front of us as a decision for council in terms of supporting the request. And I would receive a motion in terms of the council receive the request for the discussion and decide. So the decision here is, do we support their budget at 7,000, which is what I was.
6,000.
Pardon?
6,000.
6, but then they asked for another 1,000 for the coordinator.
Okay, so making the motion first, Councillor.
Councillor Krog being the motion, I'll second it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so on the table is the mural committee request. In order for us to have any dialogue with them, we need a unanimous motion of council. In the meantime, questions and discussion. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I've had the opportunity to meet on a couple of occasions with folks involved with this mural project, and it was always an effort of volunteers that they've gone back and kind of reworked this budget to include payment to a project coordinator and to pay for the right to use another artist's work. So this is not original work we're talking about here anymore. I just can't support it. It was a good idea at the time when Benson was involved in it. Unfortunately, Benson had to step back. But where it's tipped to at this point, this is not the same creature that we supported at the beginning. So whatever's coming out of this egg is not something I can support. So.
Well, and you being the liaison with it, the other being Councillor Rushagan, you're there. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in the same boat as Councillor Smith here, but in regards to your comment there about allowing any member of the committees, are there any members here of the mural committee? Yeah.
Yes.
would there be any appetite to hear their side as a
You can
suggestion?
make that
Do you want to have something to say?
I'd like to.
We would have to have unanimous consent though, so I move to suspend the rules.
Seconded by Councillor Crog, and all those in favor? It's unanimous. So we would ask, in terms of questions that council would have at this point, that you're able to answer them. Councillor Vershagin, did you have a question to start it?
Not necessarily a question. I would just like to ask. Well, I guess it's a question if I'm asking something. Why the change? It started off at the 20, then it went roughly in that neighborhood, and then it went down to 6, and now we want to go back up to 7. And what's like why are we?
I'm going to give you some history here.
Please.
So what happened is, in the summertime, was people we met, and it was just very informal. Benson took it on.
Mhm.
Great guy. Didn't really do a lot of consultation. There was some, did not include all the people that needed to be included. At the end of the day, remember Gary,
Mhm.
Benson and me.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
So everybody who involved sort of fell by the wayside. So that was a real problem, because after seeing you, and he left, so there I'm sitting, and I call a meeting with James, and again, it was me and one other person and Ted Fogg. And we went, well, what's happened to this group? What's going on? So we decided to send emails, and we did poll people, like we just asked very specific questions. And the questions that came back is that, yeah, they wanted to volunteer work time, but they did not want to volunteer an artist piece. Like there was no artist that just wanted to give a piece for the mural. So that was the problem. The second problem was the actual panels themselves, which remember I did speak to you about that. So when we looked at it, we thought, okay, in order to actually make that space work, we would have to put, and there's a woman here that can talk more about the materials, but I wanted to do that. But anyway, we decided to use panels that would then go on top of that surface, because that surface is really not going to happen very easily.
Mhm.
So that was the second issue that we heard from people. And then the third was, who was going to organize this? And so we looked at the budget. We actually then sent out a call for a meeting, saying that we would address the issues that came up from all these emails back and forth. We did do that, and it was attended again. So obviously people had been, felt that they had been heard. We came up with, okay, you guys said 6,000, we can do 6,000. We would look at 2 murals instead of 4. We would change the materials to lend themselves to that particular space. We would put in a submission for calls for artists, and there would be an $800 honorarium, because it's not, nobody's just going to give them. But what we thought is, as an honorarium, that at least we are valuing somebody's art, but we're not going to actually buy the art. We're going to say, would you give us the right to use this art? And then maybe they'll auction it off at a big event or something, and somebody will actually buy the painting. So we were thinking, okay, we can have 2 paintings, and they're either the walls are, I think, 10 by 20 on each side, or we can have one big painting. Somebody might submit and decide to cut that in half and have some sort of continuum. So there's been conversation about that, but but at this point, we thought honorarium was necessary in order to gather something. And then the third, which was somebody to organize it, we felt it was really important. None of us initially had experience. Benson had some materials ideas, but he had never said he would organize it. There was no one that was stepping up. And so we thought, okay, if we can give some sort of, again, it's not honorarium, I mean, the amount of hours they're going to put in, and we've heard that other communities have done some of that, have offered money to help coordinate. So that was the 6,000. Where we went from there was we talked about community involvement, and Darlene might want to speak to that, where they have actually, some communities have taken the artwork and they've cartooned it, so that they've made it so that it's almost like a paint by numbers thing, and then you can have the community come and actually paint the numbers, and you can put all the paint in little yogurt containers and all of that. It can be a big event. But in order for that to happen, we asked for another $1,000. So that that last 1,000 is totally up to you. We're that's helping us take it to another level. But first, is, the 6,000 is hopefully I've addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councilor Verstegen responded to that if you have a comment.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for that explanation. Am I correct when I heard you then? Did you say you're going to reduce the number of vaults from 4 to 2 then?
Correct. So they're each going to be 10 by 20. Instead
sorry.
of, yeah.
The concern I have here is, I guess, the same concern that Councilor Smith raised in regards to originally this was planned as a volunteer project, and no disrespect at all, but there are a lot of other projects done in this community, such as the GFI, the Border Bruins, just a lot of groups and a lot of organizations that essentially will have a president or an organizer who gives hundreds of hours of their life and they don't see a penny at all, and they have no experience in it either. They just, they step into the fire and they just have to do it. And then to say that we're looking at giving an honorarium or a stipend to somebody for a different group for essentially the same reason to organize when the other groups in this town don't, it's a little bit more difficult
The point
to
is well
swallow.
taken.
Yeah, thank you.
And Councilor Smith, I'm going to have to limit some debate on this at this point.
No, that's fine.
Councilor
There was, I've investigated other communities that have undertaken mural projects. And Penticton was one of my favorites, just in terms of the minutest expense that they undertook in order to get it done. I really think that what we should do, even as this council or the council that's maybe coming in, is to really review the options, because again, the creature we originally gave birth to is not the creature we're looking at now.
That was cool.
And yeah, so I would be very reticent to expect that especially with the implications that you've indicated on other community groups that do this for nothing, to basically open the floodgate on
All right, thank you. And
Pandora's box, basically.
Councilor Doherty, and then back to you.
That project, they already start on it?
No, there has not been, as far as I know.
Not yet, okay.
And
Yeah, I just wanted to also introduce Darlene, I think she had something to say. I just wanted to say also though that we're fine with that. The group does not exist. Like
Right.
whoever you spoke
Yeah.
to does not
Right.
exist.
Right.
So this was a resurrection.
Right.
And this is what happened. But if you want to go back to the original group, I don't know who that is.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to recreate it, please go on.
yeah, I'm.
I think we just need to look at it entirely. New eyes.
And can Darlene just say?
Absolutely.
A couple of brief things. In my experience, I've got a lot of experience in mural painting in other communities. In my experience, the norm is to put out a call for submissions. Collect your submissions, make a selection, and actually pay an artist to paint a mural for you.
Right.
You will not ever pay, if you're paying somebody, you will not ever get murals of those sizes for a $6,000 budget. Very unrealistic. So there is still countless man hours being donated, being volunteered to this project.
Mhm.
And I mean, your artists within the community, the same artists that are going to volunteer their time again here. Well, we're asked to volunteer our skills and our knowledge on a daily basis within this community, and many of us do that, right? It's just not recognized and not spoken about, but it's done on a daily basis.
Right, so what I'm hearing here, I think we've got a consensus happening, is that we put this on the shelf until next year, giving us time to work on it and work out a better arrangement with the artists. And the concept, I think, has great merit and shouldn't die from this. I think we need to put it to rest for a bit and give it some breathing room. Councilor Verstegen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. I absolutely agree. like Councilor Smith said, like what it was and what it is are two different things now. And from your standpoint, what we were looking for, what you're able to accomplish are two different things. And I absolutely respect what you do. I think you guys do great work in the fact that you're willing to take this on. But I think at this point, I think shelving it and if it's $7,000 that you need, we should definitely take a good look and figure out where that number comes from specifically, what it's going to look like. If it's 10,000, 15, we need to look at that too. We need to be able to have something that is it's complete. It's what's needed. It's what's wanted, right? We don't want like a hodgepodge kind of situation here.
Our budget, I'm sure the revised budget you all received is very detailed.
No, absolutely. But we were looking for 4 walls, is what I'm saying. That's what we asked
I'm
for.
going to bring this back, and Councillor Smith is having one last statement. Then
One last statement. Thank you, Worship. Again, when I spoke with the folks over at in Penticton, they had a very, very different model. And in fact, it didn't cost them any more than the dinner and the cost of paint in order to get more than a dozen murals put up in their community. So I think, examining other malls and what other communities have done is going to give us an opportunity to make a decision
Right.
with respect to what we're proposing here for our community.
And I think the point about valuing our artists is an important one to remember for us in planning this for next year. And so, do we have a positive motion on the table or a negative motion? What do we have?
I can't remember.
The council received a request from the mural committee for discussion and decision, so.
Okay, so the motion could be framed that council agrees to cooperate, and can we commit the next incoming council? How would we word this? Help me out here.
Mr. Mayor, I think you could suspend the decision on the request and forward it on to the next council.
There you go. You can suspend the decision on the request and forward it to the next council. It's a motion. Councillor Smith makes it, Councillor Kendall seconds it. Further discussion?
I just want murals.
Yeah,
You want tattoos?
more bacon.
All right,
Does a mural have bacon?
thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you very much, guys. I mean, I'm sorry it didn't come together, but it gives us a little bit of room to work.
Absolutely, and I think it's just it's something in progress here.
It's a process.
We all want the same thing. It's just a matter of how we get to
How
it.
do we get to it?
Yeah.
You know, if you could, yeah, that's good.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lyra.
Okay,
Brazil. Wait a minute. Yeah, Brazil. But
I got a picture of that kind of
Brazil for the
Oh,
students. Or actually, chamber first.
we have a congratulatory letter from the chamber received for information on on our Open for Business Award. Received for information, Councillor Smith, Councillor Rochag, and all those in favor. And thank you from the International Education for the scholarship program hosting of the students. Exciting program. Again, there's so many things that we've done that are exciting. You have a mental list of them all, but that's a great program, and I hope we can continue it on. So we've received that. I think we'll do 2 receives in a row, can we? No, that's not. That one received for information. Councillor Doherty, Councillor Kendall. All those in favor? Down to the seniors request sponsorship of the turkey dinner.
I have
Councillor
to,
Crowe.
yeah. I see my name appears on the letter, so I'll have to exclude myself, or my company's name appears on the letter. So I will exclude myself from.
You wouldn't necessarily assume you have the contract, do you?
No,
So I'm not sure
No,
you want a
but-
generic.
yeah, it's the only, it's
But it's
the
your
only, yeah, it's the only name,
Yeah.
the only company on
No, I
there.
think it's.
So it's not that, so,
Yes, received. It could be received.
yeah, it's whatever I need to do.
We'll call you back. Thank you. Okay, so, can we open with, some position on this with a motion? Councillor Doherty.
I'll second it for
Councillor
discussion.
Kendall for discussion. The estimate of $5,000 is, according to my inside sources,
Mr. Mayor,
somewhat overstated.
what was the motion that you put on the table for discussion?
Just to receive the
Yes.
message.
Just to receive it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, okay. Just want to make sure we have properly in the
Yeah.
minutes.
No, we're just receiving it. And so, yeah, the quote there from him was excessive, but we're probably looking at something in the neighborhood of 3,000 and change. Councillor Smith, exacerbation is all over your face. Councillor Rushagan,
Yeah, well, your worship, I understand that Daniel Chu has sponsored this for many years. However, it doesn't seem fair that it should fall now upon the taxpayer to pick up where he has left off because he's, for whatever reason, chosen not to continue sponsoring the program. It's not something council ever put into place. We respect our seniors, we love our seniors, but to have a dinner for seniors because somebody else who sponsored it isn't doing it anymore, it is not, in my view, fair to the average taxpayer.
they were a lot of fun.
No, I know, I've been there, I've been there.
Councillor Rushagan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't been to one. I think we're for seniors. But I too agree with what Councillor Smith says. It was a corporate sponsorship by Daniel Chu. And I appreciate the efforts put in by Mr. Elfwhite. I wish he was here to speak to it. So I could find out whether or not he's looked at other corporate sponsorships like Rocks or Winter 4, possibly any other organizations or some other way of funding it, because I think it is a benefit to this community. However, I don't necessarily always appreciate when it's just, we can't get money when it's going to the city.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, where we're going with this. And while I'd like to see this dinner happen, I can't support us giving $5,000 to it, which also, from what I hear, is it's high, and to give money out based on educated guesses, as it's worded as an educated guess, as opposed to a realistic quote, I can't support that. So I'll just stick with receiving it.
Patrick and I should exclude ourselves for being seniors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking there.
But in speaking in favor of it, but not necessarily us doing it, is the fact that it became over 5 years a place where a lot of seniors had never seen each other since the last event. And so it really was an interesting social, but as you're saying, that should not be our responsibility. I think if the seniors can recognize that positive impact of that event, because, I think that they would value it enough to continue it and find the funding. We could be part of that, but we're not the answer.
Yeah.
Councillor, who was up here? Councillor Kendall.
Well, just to make a comment, Your Worship, thank you. I agree with the other councillors, and I mean, ultimately, this doesn't fit in with our grant and aid policy because we don't have one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate again the fact that Mr. Chu, sponsored this dinner and in the past. I just, again, think that it's just an unfair way of participating in the community. Either we, again, back to our grant and aid policy, either everybody's involved or nobody's involved. And this is one of those things where if we do this, then it becomes who is not worthy to get a dinner.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't support it.
Okay, so we just have a motion to receive this on the table. Do we want to expand that to thanking him very much and hoping that? I'm not sure.
Mr. Mayor, if the council elects to receive it for information, we can just respond back saying that it's contrary to the city's grant and aid policy.
Thank you. I would go with that.
Okay, all right, so that is the motion in front of us then, take a mover.
I'll second that.
I think you did already.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Does somebody want to?
Invite Councillor Trot back in.
Okay, Councilor Carter.
I like that.
It's got magazines and everything.
Well, I'm impressed. Taking away money from
And when you have to be Scrooge.
Mr. Mayor, just to keep this revolving door going here, for the permissive tax exemption bylaw, and as much as my daughter attends Little People Center daycare, I'm going to have to excuse myself too for the tax bylaw, just so there's no perceived notion that I'm going to conflict of interest because it could affect my race and I pay for my daycare.
All right.
All right.
So when they come before. Anybody else? Great child.
Okay.
All right, so what we have is the final reading of bylaw number 2004, our permissive tax exemption.
I move.
Moved by Councilor Smith.
Second.
Councilor Doherty. Any questions? We've gone over it enough. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we can invite
We can
our
get Councilor Shagan back.
back in.
Okay.
Okay, so again, the noise bylaw, we're putting an amendment in. And then we're determining to give final reading to this bylaw this evening. Is that correct?
I'll move.
Councilor Doherty makes the motion, Councilor Smith seconds it. Discussion, Councilor Crog first, then Councilor Smith.
Yeah, I said it last time, I'll say it again, but maybe differently, so it'll be more interesting. I can't support this. It's good that we're all trying to get on the same page, but I don't believe that there's enough recourse and or structure to it to say you exceed this, because all it says is that they have to work with the city. And one of the things, and it keeps pushing my button, everybody keeps mentioning the mill and Roxall, and the mill and Rockall. And the fact that, oh, well, they built there, they bought there, and they knew the mill was there, which is correct, an old, smaller mill. What about our largest subdivision? What about Valmar? It's sitting right next to industrial property. They could crank that puppy 24 hours a day, make whatever noise, and as long as they, pander a little bit to the city, they're working with the city. So it's not just Rockall. It's a huge part of our city, and I think it just needs to have more structure to it or substance so that everybody's on the same page, not wishy-washy. I'll shut up now. Okay.
Councilor Smith.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've had reports from a number of people, and this is from all over the community, that have been hearing almost like sonic boom loud noises that haven't been identified or sourced where they're coming from. And again, it might or might not tie into this, but I don't know.
Well, and I've read it and feel that it's a step in the direction of being able to apply some controls to this and to apply some rules to the conduct of industry.
Mr. Mayor, if council would like to, we're looking at the final reading here. If council can direct staff, if they'd like to bring back some appropriate decibel levels that we could inject into the bylaw. I know that the manager of building inspection and bylaw services has been conducting this and gathering this information. That could be brought forward too as another amendment to the bylaw, so we can finish the readings. Then what we can do is bring forward the decibel levels to have council have understanding of what those are, and then
Schedule B.
a Schedule B for that they would have to be able to meet those levels. And if we had a situation that was arising, say for instance, where there was a question from industry or a question from the community, are they achieving those decibel levels? We could actually receive the readings and compare that back to make sure that they're within those acceptable levels. There is industry standards for acceptable levels. There is industry standards when it comes to motorcycles. There's an industry standard when it comes to these different things. So I think is giving the final reading to the bylaw for council to consider that, but then ask the staff bring forward a further amendment to the bylaw in the near future with the decibel levels to be added in.
Councillor, does that soothe your concerns to some extent, that it would be, take this now as a major improvement, but it opens the door to us beginning to set standards? And to do that, the first step would be a decibel level. I'm not sure how that would even look, but Councillor Wershagin and I think Councillor Kendall is trying to get in here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely agree with what Councillor Prague says. And I also agree with what our CEO was saying, but I think that approach by approving this and then going back to that is the cart before the horse kind of argument. I think those should be in it before it's approved as opposed to approving them putting it in after the fact. So I'll be speaking against this.
Okay, Councillor Kendall.
I was going to suggest what Councillor Wershagin did as well. It's coming up with those decibel levels. That may be a debatable issue as well, that if we approve the bylaw and then debate it afterwards.
Yeah.
You think we'd compromise our position, but we're debating with ourselves?
Yeah, that's what I think, yes. And what we put.
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, what would happen now is if council chooses to defeat the bylaw, which is well within council purview to do so, we would have to prepare to answer to the ombudsperson about how we're doing this, and there could be an adjudication on the city. Just being prepared for that, which could be, which we heard from the ombudsperson on how we have to conduct ourselves from our rulings perspective. The other thing that we would have to do here is rescind the first 3 readings of the bylaw and move that back. So we'd have to bring forward another report to council to consider the rescinding of the bylaw. So we've moved it to the first 3 readings. So in order for this to happen, I believe that we've already rescinded the existing bylaw and parallel to this. So we would be then without any noise bylaw, and there would be no existing noise bylaw.
Yeah, I think that we dealt early with the fact that this is more of a legal legislative amendment that puts us in a position of at least recognizing the rights of industry, not letting them abuse it, but getting them into the regulations that we have. So I'm going to support it, and I think that we are going backwards at this point to defeat this, and that we certainly have an ability here to shape the outcome of the regulations. But I think to send this back without support right now is going to make a whole lot of work. Councillor, who would let their hand up first?
Thank you. Again, the noise bylaw as it stands, or as it stood before we rescinded it, had essentially no teeth. So whether we have one or not for the temporary period of time that it takes for us to come up with some decibel levels and all the other details that might flesh this out a little bit is essentially irrelevant. So I would be in favor of rescinding or canceling or doing what we do to this bylaw.
Mr. Allen and then Councillor Kendall.
Mr. Mayor, just by correction, we are making an amendment to the bylaw, so we would still be with an existing bylaw. The timeframe that it took us to get this bylaw done to this point, we will, in reality, it's going to take some time to pull that together. If council chooses, we would defer back to the existing bylaw. It's my mistake. We currently already have the bylaw. We're just making an amendment to the bylaw.
Okay.
So you're just not approving the amendment to the bylaw.
Right. Okay.
All right, Councillor Krog.
Obviously I don't support it. We need some more detail. But is there a bit of a compromise? Because I don't want to do it the way it is, and I don't want to go back later and then say, oh, by the way, we were gonna put decibels in, right? If it was phrased as the amendment, that had, that the, criteria for the decibel levels, will be attached as Schedule A or whatever, to be done. If it's identified that it has to be done, then it could be part of it and it could possibly go forward. I don't know if that would work or not.
So what we're looking at is whether or not we're supporting the amendment.
Yeah.
So let's keep that in mind, Councillor. Square.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I don't necessarily think this is such a big deal. We've defeated this bylaw actually earlier, was it this year or late last year, due to other issues, not necessarily industry, but issues to do with the start of time for construction and those kind of things, which still have not been addressed. However, I think if we were to defeat this, I don't necessarily think it's as big an issue in as much as that staff will have to know exactly what council is looking for, in as much as all we're looking for is something a little bit more concise when it comes to decimal levels. And if they were to come back to us with that information, it wouldn't be a long process, because as our CEO was saying, there are industry standards that need to be met, and that kind of information should be readily available, and it shouldn't be difficult to find, attach, come back to us so we can see it. And I think the gist of what we're looking for is here. We just want that next layer, and I don't think it's going to be all that difficult if defeated to appease council.
I know defeating things at final reading is not a very popular.
But that's why you got final reading, Mr. Mayor.
That's why it works that way.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
I think all my concerns have been voiced.
What is the motion in front of council at this point?
The result, the recommendation was that, the recommendation was that, the result, the council recommends to direct staff to include 5I as an amendment to include industrial operations with the exclusion section of the bylaws.
Right,
So council can vote on that resolution, and if council chooses to, depending on the vote of that on that resolution, it will sit defeated, and staff would then bring back another try at it for the final reading. So you can defeat this motion, and we would bring it back. Because the options for council are to if we scroll down to the bottom of the report, council can choose to support the recommendation, council can choose not to support the recommendation, or council could choose to refer the report back to staff for more information. But in this case, Mr. Mayor, because we've given it 3 readings, legislatively, we cannot make alterations to the bylaw until we can do it after 2nd reading, but before 3rd reading. So in order for this to go back, we'd have to rescind all 3 readings or the 3rd reading. But let us, if you make your vote today, then let us bring it back to you with what you're looking for. And then we'll ask you to rescind the 3rd reading along with when we bring forward the new report with the following recommendation, that it will allow you to rescind 3rd reading, and then we would present the new options at the committee of the whole that then could be heard, and then 2 weeks after that, after its resting period, it could be presented to council again for the...
I have a suspicion that's the direction we might go. So, council, are you ready for the question on this matter? So what we're doing is defeating it in final reading, which puts it into the statutory process of bringing it back within certain limits.
Okay.
So it's important enough to you, obviously, and I'll ask for a show of hands, all those in favor of the motion. All those opposed. Motion is defeated. Thank you very much.
Do we need a motion to refer it back?
I don't think so. I think because we defeated the motion in final reading, there's a process that we have, the policy that kicks in. Okay, the 3rd reading of the WCMCON closure bylaw, 3rd reading. This is the traverse portion of undeveloped road. We reviewed it this morning in committee of the whole.
Mr. Mayor, we actually, this report here that you're reviewing today is the report to look at to close a section of road.
Right, yeah.
So that's what we're looking at today.
Right, right,
I'll move that.
Yeah, I'll second it.
right. All those in favor? Okay, as usual, I thought it was an off case there. Electrical utility regulatory repeal bylaw. And bringing us down to the electrical utility repeal bylaw.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at here is giving first and second reading to the regulatory bylaws. One would be to repeal the existing bylaw, and the next one down there is to enact a first and second reading of the new regulatory bylaw for discussion. It opens it into the forum of formal discussion that's on the table. And Mr. Love is here this evening with us, and will be speaking to it. So first of all, can we have a motion for first and second reading of bylaw 1543R? Councillor Doherty, Councillor Smith. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. And the next item, I'm assuming here we would put on the table, and then Mr. Love would open with discussion. So a motion to approve first and second reading of bylaw 1975. Councillor Smith, Councillor Doherty, and opening it up. Alex, you have a report and some items to cover.
Okay, I'll just start off by, this bylaw is simply as we presented on September 15th with a couple of amendments that we identified on September 15th, namely that the power factor in the bylaw we brought for information in September was changed from 0.9 to 0.95, and that's reflected in the bylaw. In the 2 or 3 weeks since we introduced the bylaw for information, we have received some comments on the residential solar PV provision there, suggesting that we should perhaps have a provision for commercial installations, and also that we should have a higher capacity limit instead of 10 kVA, some larger number. We did take a look at those and thought, no, we should keep the limit of 10 kVA because that reasonably covers any solar PV that could be contemplated. It also fits nicely within the capacity of the existing utility system to not have to make upgrades, where certainly some much larger numbers like 50 kVA, we would definitely have to make upgrades. And in between, we would have to study it to see if we would have to make upgrades. On the commercial side, there has been an indication of interest in installing a commercial PV system. It's hard to gauge, really what stage the proponent is at. It could be quite far into it, or maybe just in their first initial look. So we don't really have a good read on that. But certainly commercial PV is much more complicated to incorporate into the bylaw because, first of all, our commercial rates have stepped rates, so there's a lot more analysis and of how the utility would interface with the commercial customer is far more complicated. Also, commercial systems imply, but it's not necessarily true, that they would be larger than residential. And that gets into the question of how much energy should the utility buy, because solar generated generally comes at a premium cost over what we can buy in the wholesale terms. So that would be to the detriment of the existing ratepayers. So for that reason, we kept commercial out of the bylaw at this stage, although at some point the question will need to be addressed. So if there were any questions, I could try and address them.
Councilor Kendall.
Thank you, Alex. Just for clarity, the 10 kVA system that our residential, the bylaw is addressing tonight, and maybe our Mr. Copan can jump in on this if so required, but I mean, the amount of solar panels that would realistically be able to be installed on a residential dwelling or in a residential location wouldn't be able to exceed that type of power output. And I think that's maybe where we need some clarity, is that even though we could increase the amount that we would be willing to buy, the amount of coverage at a residential location wouldn't be able to produce the kind of power that would exceed those requirements.
I think if I can sort of rephrase the question just to make sure I understand it, is could a resident really feasibly install more than 10 kVA? And
That's in excess of what they would use and that we would be willing to buy back.
yeah, that's because 10 kVA is generally in excess of what our residents would use. They would be an exporter. As a general rule of thumb, when we're looking at new loads to be connected, we count on 5 kVA as a peak for a normal residence and 12 to 15 if it's an electric heat only residence. So it sort of gives you some context there. So probably on average, we're looking at 6 or 7 for average home. I think also 10 kVA of solar panels, assuming a house was situated the right way, so the roof is facing the right way, it would probably have to be a pretty large house to even have enough surface area on the roof. But possible.
Councilor Smith is waiting patiently there.
Continue.
In Nelson, we have some solar PV customers, and the largest one is 10 kVA, and that's a school.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I mean, a lot of questions popped up even in terms of units, and I'm glad that you've taken the opportunity to kind of clarify where KVA relates to KW,
Yeah.
which is where a lot of people understand. And I know in the discussions I've had with both the representatives of the net metering programs for Fortis and for BC Hydro, this isn't, it's not representative of an opportunity for people to be independent power producers. So the idea that a person that's throwing up a $30,000 system on their roof is going to actually pay back or cover the capital cost of the installation of that unit any time before 30 years. Because in terms of net metering, it's not about getting a check every month for what you produce. It's about offsetting the cost of the power that you would otherwise buy from the utility.
That's right. So somebody putting in a large solar PV on their home would fundamentally expect to see their power purchase reduce. And they might export a bit to the utility, but offsetting that is there would be the winter months when they would be primarily a purchaser of the utility.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke with Alaptina, who is the net metering program director for BC Hydro, she indicated to me that that was a very important part of her job, was to settle down the expectations of those people that were interested in undertaking a net metering program, simply because she said, well, if at the end of the year you had $1,000 credit, you had a $30,000 system, it would take you 30 years to pay back what your initial investment was. So it's not, again, as I say, it's not about check generation, it's just about offsetting. So I appreciate your clarifications on it.
Council. Further comments?
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, Alex, if somebody had a larger system, so moving from the 10 kVA up to a 50 kVA, when you and I were talking, there may be implications that it would require upgrades on our electrical utility to facilitate that. A facility in the community or in their yard, that could have implications on our power utility?
That's right. So if somebody wanted to put in, let's say, for example, a 50 kVA system, we would definitely have to do bit of an engineering study to say, okay, well, what wires and transformers would have to be upgraded in order to accommodate that? And, probably on your average residential location, it would be some, for sure. It'd be pretty rare to find something at that level where it would be nothing.
Can you comment on the Nelson Solar Farm? Is that something that's unique to Nelson? People can buy into a certain amount of panel space, or there's some buy-in
Like shareholders.
a commercial operation?
Sure, I can just give you a slight overview. We're just getting ready to roll that out in Nelson next week, actually, so you
I'm
should
not
hear
supposed to know
first.
about it.
Well, but yeah, we're looking at a solar community garden where the electric utility will install a solar farm and allow our customers to buy in a share of it. The idea that it can be built on a wholesale basis more cost effectively than individual residents.
Right,
And people can own a fractional share rather than,
without the big investment up front.
yeah, because somebody might say, well, I don't want to invest $15,000, but I'd go for $5,000. So now they could buy just a $5,000 piece. So we haven't officially rolled it out yet, but the intention is we're gonna present it to our customers next week.
But again, that type of operation requires an investment in the hardware behind it.
That's
That
correct.
goes into the system, so not a simple matter of putting up a bunch of panels.
No, there's more to it than that for sure.
Yeah. Other questions, council? No? All right, and Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The council received a report.
We don't know how to read it. This is third read, isn't it?
No,
It's first and second.
Oh, first and second.
So, Mr. Mayor, after the first and second
First
reading,
and second reading.
yeah, we have the opportunity now to go out to the public and ask for further feedback from the public on the solar power initiative that's within the electrical bylaw to get a greater understanding of what the public is looking for. So basically, now that we've had the first two readings, if council votes on those, I'm not sure if that votes happened yet. No.
No, this is the first and second reading.
Yeah, so the idea behind that now is
It's
that
such a good report, I would tell you.
it can trigger us to basically go out and consult with the public further.
Yeah, I like the fact that this puts it on the table. It's not rushing things forward, it's giving them formal attention.
Yeah.
And so that's the motion on the floor, first and second reading. Who's making the motions? Councilor Doherty. Councilor Shag.
Or Kendall, the one with his hand up.
Yeah.
First and second.
Or me waving.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Yeah.
There's no late items, and I see already some hands up there. I wonder then, since we have tried to keep the questions from the public based on what was on the agenda, it's a perfect timing for questions related to water and electrical issues. Well, mostly water.
Mostly electrical.
Mostly electrical.
Done. And then,
Thank you, Mr. Love, for coming and speaking about the electrical utility. I've got a couple questions for him. Is that all right? Or do I address you?
well, yeah, it's a bit unorthodox, but I guess we could have you just, if you make them loud enough that I can hear them, then I'm sure Mr.
First, I'm grateful to the city and Mr. Love for posting information about our electrical meters on the website. I've been reading that certain smart meters, when you set up a fixed network, that then you can have remote shut off. And I was curious with the C1SR or 300, whether if the city were to set up a fixed network, whether it, those meters could be shut off remotely. That was the first question.
Your worship, we don't have smart meters.
No, but Mr. Love and I talked about the fact that we were going to get this kind of question and that he would answer in terms of the meters and what we're doing with them.
Sure. So I'll just, the question is, do the meters that we currently use for the electric utility, are they capable of having remote shut off? And the answer is no, they're not. Those remote shut off facilities are part of what they call an AMI meter, also commonly called a smart meter. And we have an AMR meter that does not have those features.
So you couldn't set up a fixed network.
If we wanted to do that, we would have to set up a fixed network and change out to an AMI meter instead of the AMI.
One of the reasons I was curious about that, from looking at my meter, it looks like it's the R300, which has high power plus 20 dBm. So I was curious, first of all, what power output that is. Do you know offhand?
So the question was, the meter that this customer has appears to be
High power.
what's called a high power meter. And what that means is the AMR meters that we have came in two, well, there's a few different electrical configurations, but in terms of its transmitter for meter reading, there's two variations, standard power and high power. And it's designated by a -2 or a -3 in the transmitter part number. So a higher power means just that, it is higher power output on the radio frequencies than the standard meter. The reason for that is because the standard meter doesn't have enough power to get through like walls of an apartment building. So they have to go to a higher power model in order for the meter reader to actually be able to read it.
Right,
Yeah, I
okay.
was reading that.
I'm gonna ask that you not dominate the question period this evening. We have another person waiting for the question. Chris,
Well, your comment about the SPCA, looking to come back and work with the city of Grand Forks is a perfect segue for me to ask a question that I should have asked this morning at the committee of the whole. And that's with respect to, dogs off leash, in City Park. I received a phone call from my nephew who lives in that area. And he was walking his dog, who is a fairly large animal, on leash. And a gentleman in a pickup truck pulled in and just let his dog out, and the dog was small. And so the concern was, would he have been liable had this man's dog come and been, kind of gone over to Ebony and
Ebony ate it.
yeah. And so he spoke to the gentleman and he was rather rebuffed. And I said, well, report it to the commissioner because currently they're doing the animal control. But having advised him that, what is the city's position on that and what should someone actually do when they are, find themselves in that kind of a position where they're abiding by the laws, but someone else is not?
yeah, I think the animal control is a 24/7 call number, and I haven't heard any complaints about their response to emergencies, but I have heard several comments about aggressive dogs in City Park over the last few days. Actually, there's been a couple of notorious dogs down there that are intimidating people on the sidewalk. So yeah, I think we need to get to this, and again, it's a regional service, but to bring it to your attention, I'll certainly do that tomorrow.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor,
And further,
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like, if council would like, we could ask the manager of bylaw and building inspection services to contact the commissioners to, when we receive those reports, so we can ask the commissioners to attend the park around those specific hours to potentially see if we can deal with the situation, because it is that, it's all about timing for that to address it.
training the owners.
Yeah.
I believe right now there's only two of them, but one's on, the other one's off, and vice versa, so.
John Smith and Bud Alcock.
Okay,
So that I can pass that information on.
yes, we'll certainly be reporting that. Councillor Crog, you had a comment?
I watch a lot of judge shows.
Oh, yeah.
And if your dog's on a leash and it gets attacked by another dog or whatever, then according to Judge Judy and all the rest of them, you're doing your part because seriously, the bylaw, there is a leash. And if yours is and theirs isn't, then they would be the ones that would be liable for costs and
Yeah.
stuff.
No, it's,
Well, he was just concerned
Yeah.
because the dog that was not on a leash was the smaller of the two.
Yeah.
And, he didn't want anything to to happen. So,
Pit bulls are small.
thank you.
Thank you. And Donna, I'm sure you'll have one more before we leave here, but,
And it was basically, number one, I was curious about the power output, but I read about the meter that it's for basements and difficult to read places, and I thought that we're having someone drive by and my place is not difficult to read. So I was a bit confused why we have that high power output, and for one thing, I don't know if Mr. Love might know why that is.
could you summarize that, Alex? We didn't all hear it back here, but
Yeah, so, sorry, I don't know.
Donna.
But the lady's question was, why she might have a high power meter on her house when she doesn't appear to have any particular constraints like living in an apartment building. And the reason is because Icon just started shipping them all with that.
what's the high power?
Because, I mean, when they say high power, it went from next to nothing to 6 times next to nothing, which is still,
Next to nothing.
yeah. But I think the reason they did that is because it just resolved all the meter reading issues and stopped having
Right.
changing meters.
All right. Thank you very much. No, I'm gonna cut it off at that.
This is a different.
No, that's it, Donna. Thank you.
It's related to the bylaws and what you've read and passed.
Donna, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and then I'll come and talk to you about that right after we adjourn. And council, that's it for question period. Councilor Smith,
Adjourn.
adjourn.
Thank you.